right, welcome everybody. This will be our last program in our Smart Money series. We have a few programs in last year, but hopefully this is the last one. And this will be a very basic one on budgeting. Now, this is actually one I gave one last year, but I've cleaned up a bit and a few more slides. This is designed for anyone who's maybe done budget for a while, but more especially for someone who's maybe starting out making a budget, wants to brush up on their budgeting skills. Not everyone keeps track of their budget in the same way. And you may have some blind spots as well. I know I do. And that's probably why I wrote this thing. If I talk a bit fast or you miss something, say something. If you have a question, I can answer it. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me. I want to be clear that I am not any form of keeper, accountant, financial advisor, or planner. If you need professional help, seek one of these professions. Today's talk is a collection of articles, tools, and resources to help you when planning your finances. But if you have any in-depth questions you need answered, please talk to one of these professions. Now, a fun statistic that I pulled from a Forbes article. Nearly a third of all libraries declare bankruptcy and are frequently become estranged from family members and friends, incurring a greater instance of depression, drug alcohol abuse, divorce, and suicide than the average American. Financial planners joke if you have enemies, give them a lottery ticket. Now, $1 billion will not last you if you don't know how to budget. Now, this will probably win the lottery someday, but we will have money of some varying amount that we have to manage to meet our basic needs of our family, and live what we roughly call a good life. And a budget is how you do that. It's a wonderful tool to do that. First off, let's cover what a budget is not. Why is that not? Oh, sorry. Okay. First off, let's cover what a budget is not. A budget is not hard. All it takes is a little simple math, awareness, and the commitment to stick to it. Budgeting is first and foremost a tool to help meet your financial goals. It's achievable and can be as detailed as you need it to be. There's several different ways to build a budget, but the one that matters first and foremost is the one that works for you. It's the one that you can stick to. It should change to meet your goals, and if it's not, feel free to revise it or find a different method. Now, here are a few key guidelines when you're first planning a budget. First and foremost, identify your income. Know when you get paid, how you get paid from all sources of income. We have to know exactly how much is coming in before we can decide where we'll be going. As well, list all your general monthly expenses, anything from principally this is going to be housing, utilities, gas, food, childcare. Also keep note of any non-monthly expenses, such as either non-monthly, yearly, or projected expenses as well. Focus on making achievable, realistic goals. Whether you want to focus on school, pay off debt, save for retirement, have some kind of plan. The most important thing is to keep the lights on, of course, but it will be much more rewarding to follow the budget if you have something to shoot for. And follow. Measure your progress. This could mean saving all your receipts or keeping a tighter watch on your bank account. Do as much work as you need to do to make sure you're following the budget. And the best way to follow your budget is to do the least work possible. And it's ways do as many things on automatic payment as possible. And most companies are more than happy to do it for you. Now, keep in mind, this is written with the intent for someone who's single. Every dollar I make, I know where it goes. But if you have people who you're sharing the budget with, like family, kids, or at least you budget for them as well. Make them part of the process and discuss the budget with them. None of your plans are going to work out if your spouse or child throws at the math in some way. And finally, revise. If one or more of your targets is higher or lower than expected, change it. If it groceries are averaging 300 or 200, go over your purchase to see where you can trim places, or if you just something you can't budge on, just raise the cap for that category. Life changes. You lose roommates, you have kids, the car breaks down. The budget has to change to accommodate. Now, if you have any questions over something costs, Google is your friend. A lot of sites have calculators on various things to help you estimate costs. I'm just going to share a good amount of them today. Any questions? Oh, okay. Now, one important part of budgeting is that the price of things changes and sometimes surges. I'm sure you've noticed, but everything is more expensive and it's expected to continue to increase. The average price of gas is nearly $5 in some places. I think it's like 4.20 here, which increases the cost of nearly everything. I don't have much to say because we do not have control over broad economic forces, but keep price increases in mind when planning your budget. Another thing to consider for anyone who's trying to get a loan for a car or a home is that interest rates are going up as well. The Federal Reserve typically lowered interest rates near zero during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. They're now tentatively approved a 0.25% increase, which doesn't sound like much, but it's caused everyone to freak out. Keep in mind this is from basically near zero. But this is one of the reasons that the housing market has been so hot right now, is that it's basically it's never been easier to get into a loan. Again, broad economic forces we can't control, but keep in mind that when making financial decisions. Is it not? There we go. I also include a few basic tips, making the math to your budget a bit easier. What I like to do is always round down your income and up in your costs. Like say we make a bit over 43,000. Better just to say we just make 43,000 when we're doing the math. As well, your utility bills, gas for the car, groceries are all going to vary each month. You may not have an exact number to start out, but you will get understand it. Get changes based on season. You might pay more for heating in winter. And again, like nothing. Maybe more for before gas in the winter, and then more for electric in the summer. It's better to assume we have less than we do, and everything costs a bit more than it seems, because generally things do, and it's better to have that small remainder of the month that have that small remainder in the green than being the red by the end of the month. And one thing I'm going to throw out for budget as well is certain costs that hit you, like some monthly costs at different times, different amounts, or maybe they hit like bi-monthly or like every year. How much you have in your bank account per month is going to vary from the budget because some costs have at different times. And one trick I like to do is to convert everything into a monthly cost. Let's say your dog, for example. If the average yearly cost to own this small dog is $780, which includes food, toys, medical costs, pensions. If you love this dog, divide by 12, and we get about $65 a month. I also use things like just vehicle registration or taxes, or possibly some memberships. Not good. Okay. Now, there are a bunch of different ways to build a personal budget. Some of you heard the envelope method, but the one that I like is the 50-30-20 rule. It's simple, conservative model that's easy to work with. Now, a lot of budgeting rules work off your gross income. What that number means vastly differs across the country. If your gross income is, say, 60,000, that's going to go a lot farther 10 minutes outside a small town than will in downtown Chicago. Let's just work with what actually ends up in our bank account at the end of the month. And the basics are 50% needs, which includes housing, groceries, utilities, healthcare, and transportation. Wants, these things you don't need, but we want them. Eating out, movies, go to concerts, hobbies, and then savings, which includes your retirement fund, emergency fund, and debt payments. It may or may not include housing. Now, the means-based partition covers needs and savings, but making room for wants is part of a good budget. Remember, we're planning for the life we want to live. These things are just our guidelines, and not everyone may be in position to do 30% fund or even 20% in savings. But these are good numbers to shoot for. And again, this first sector, we're getting into needs, or if you want to be more exact, the first 2.5 rows of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. To extent a budget can address belonging and love, that may or not be covered by having a family to provide for, but self-esteem and expectation will be covered by wants. All we care about right now is food, water, shelter, and things you need to get them, and anyone dependent on you. And the first thing we should cover is just general cost of living. How much does it cost to live, eat, travel, and get sick in a given area. Where you live is key to all our basic costs. Just to hear some example numbers for living within the Boulder area. Now these are a bit older. I forgot to update them, but as you can see, it's a bit higher now. But yeah, let's see. Just look at rent, for example. It's a bit higher than would be on the country on average. So I'd probably go like 50 miles south and probably knock off like $100 off the average rent. Again, our main concerns are housing, commute, food, and healthcare. There's a lot of sites that let you calculate costs living in your area. I've included one. I think it was mentioned in Jez's presentation last night on general food costs. Again, number is a good one. You can find one. There's many others as well, though. Again, your best bet in most cases is to just check where you live or plan to live and grab the statistics there. Say if you want to find how much rent is going to cost, just go find an apartment listing in like a given area. And speaking of apartments, housing is going to be make up the majority of your needs, and it's one of the most important things you can budget for. First, just determine how much you can afford. The smart number is not go over 30% of your gross income. Again, this is not always possible, but according to the Pew Research Center in 2018, at least 38% of people were deemed rent burden, which is definitely increased now. But 30% of gross is ideal, at least according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Another thing that's to mention is for renters is that many landlords will still not take you if you make a certain number under the required rent. Like usually I've never seen is like 40 times. Yeah, 40 times the rent. You have to make that as your annual income. So even if you can afford it on paper, you might not be taken. That's just how things work out. Again, once we know what you can afford, do your research. Stay within your budget, but make sure you find a place that fits your needs. And if you have family, it's going to have certain size or location requirements. Again, be willing to shop around and negotiate if you can. Again, you have less room on renting, but if you buy a home, if you're buying a home, you have more room to save money or at least make a better decision. That's I know people who have gotten like $150 off their rent because they signed a lease at the right time during a snowstorm. You may not have all the luxury of time, but if you do, just put in a couple hours to research and look at as many places as you need to. Home is some place that you should be happy to come to. It pays to be picky. Now, I pulled this chart from CNBC. It gives a good general idea of what you should be spending based on your income. Again, if you want 29% of gross income if you're conservative and have other costs, or 41 if you have no debt. If you live in an area where it's affordable, or if you live in an area where affordable housing is still out of reach, government assistance may be an option to you. Again, not everyone's financial decisions, everyone's financial place is different, and life doesn't follow guidelines, but it's better to go with an estimate. Now, if we know what we can afford and what we need, the next to consider is to ask if you want to rent or buy. Like a lot of discussion, it's going to depend on both your finances and what's important to you. I know renters who dream of having their own yard and homeowners who hate having to do work in the place. But some general points do exist. Again, buying is advantageous if you expect to be in the home for at least 5 years. Last I checked, some numbers where the average tenure for home ownership is about 13 years, but at least plan for at least 5. You should be settled in your career and your finances. You don't have to. You do not, and if you do not expect any major burdens or hiccups, but so that's part of life. And it'll happen. If you can put down at least 20% of needing private mortgage insurance and to pay closing costs. Now, there's also HUD loan programs that can knock that down to close to zero, but it's only if you qualify for those. Again, it helps you if interest rates are low, like they currently are. Which I mean, like the actual loan you get from like a bank or a loan company, they'll give you a much better rate. Again, think of it as partially as an investment. Your money is not going to somewhere else. It stays with the home. Though again, homes are depreciating in value and require regular maintenance and upkeep. Now, that said, renting is still great if your life is in flux and you plan to move in the future. You're thinking of taking, like, say, you want to take a job out of state, or like, just, do you mean to move for a better position? And if interest rates are high or the house market is pricier, again, that's another common concern, is that because the market is so hot, it's priced a lot of people out of the homes. Now, seeing if there is homes in the areas, it doesn't really help you if, like, say, if all you want is like a two-bedroom, like small two-bedroom place or condo, there's only like 4 bedrooms and up, that doesn't really do you any good. Also, if you don't have like the funds to make the down payment or closing costs, but if that's what you're shooting for, a wonderful reason is to make a budget to try and hit those goals. Again, if there's something wrong with the area, if your life changes drastically, you can move. But once you buy a home, it'll be very difficult to move or make any large changes. It's a huge pain, and it consumes a lot of your time and money just if you want to try to move homes. As well, consider costs. There are some things you need to consider for renting or buying. Again, renting is generally more expensive long term. Housing, generally cheaper. Again, this depends on your area and how your life turns out. But one advantage with buying with a mortgage is that the monthly cost is fixed based on terms of that mortgage. If you lease up, your landlord might decide to increase rent maybe because his costs are going up, or because he wants to do work on the unit, or maybe he just wants to. If you have a 15 or a 30-year fixed mortgage, what you pay towards principal and interest will be the same as your last payment at the end of those 30 years. This doesn't cover costs like utilities or taxes, which may go up drastically during that time period, but month to month, a mortgage is much more stable. For both, you have to consider utilities. Sometimes they may be covered through your rent or the homeowner association. And the big one for owning a home is just the closing costs. The lease, you sign it. With the lease, you sign it, you're in. Buying a home is like at least a month-long process with a bunch of people involved to make sure everything is on level and they all get their cut. With all the fees involved, it could be anywhere from 7 to 10% of the home's value to actually close a home. Again, also include some links to some popular sites to help you give an idea of rent and home costs. But there's a bunch out there. Feel free to pick the ones that suit you. I'll just give you a second. There we go. Okay. Now I've included a graph here just to give an idea of the price of renting compared to buying. Say, for example, here, if you stay in your home for 5 years, buying is generally cheaper. As you can see, the spike in rent, it goes up much faster than the price of the average loan would. And this is a note on current housing. Wait, did I go too far? Whoops. There we go. Okay. Yeah, just a note. Housing, in general, housing costs are going up. Not enough homes or just places to live in general are being built fast enough to meet market demand. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's lack of workers, construction costs are more expensive, materials, shortages, again, the price of gas. But it's a really shocking increase. Home prices rose nationally at least 19%, over 9% year over year in January, up from 18 in December of last year. Also gives you an idea of what happened to rent as well. A large increase. And here's a fun graph I found. This deal shows some home prices across Cook County from 2000 to 2001. I highlight Orland Park, Lamont, because they're close to our neck of the woods. As you can see, home prices across the greater Chicago area are going up about 9%. But this is a whole story, and there are some massive spikes in particular places. Popular home buying site Zillow also reported an 18% increase in Bloomberg since January of last year. Again, even interest rates are low. Just the housing market is just so crazy right now. No matter, again, another thing to consider for cost is utilities. No matter where where or how you live, you will have to pay for utilities in some way. Depending on the lease or HOA fees, some of these may be covered. But if it's not explicitly said, you're on the hook for it. And it's going to include electric, gas, water, trash, and internet. Costs vary by size of your home and usage, but generally you are going to pay at least $200 to have more within Illinois for all of your utilities. Now, I did include cable as well, but I don't know many people who actually want to play for cable anymore. Even certain streaming services. Now, I included LinkedIn because we also have a collection of Roku's here at the library. So if you want to use something off like Netflix, HBO Now, or Disney Plus, you can just check one of those out. Like say if you just want like one particular series, you don't need to pay for the monthly. You can just check one of these out from the library, binge it, give back to us, and that's free. I wouldn't say free. It's already included in your taxes. If you want to take advantage of what you're already paying for in some way, feel free to check out Roku. Another big one is food. This was covered by Jen's presentation last night, but I just included a note here. Again, the average cost is probably going to be like $150 to $300 per person, given on what you want to spend and how thrifty you want to be. Now, and again, if you want to eat out, this is going to increase your cost substantially. Again, the best way to learn to save money is learn to cook and shop smart. And that was covered in the presentation last night. You can view that still on our YouTube page. It's going to be up there for 4 weeks. Another big one is definitely right now is transportation. For the majority of the United States, if you want to have a job, you'll have to drive there. Excluding the cost of actually buying the car, there's a lot of related costs to keep it running. And those costs add up. I've included 2 calculators that give a really good idea of how to budget for costs. The second from Computer Solutions gives a good estimate on all the apparent costs of driving not just gas, but maintenance and tires. The one from the University of California does include some things like, it tries to include all possible costs, which includes insurance and depreciation on the vehicle, which is hard to estimate, but driving a car drives its worth down considerably. And something you're going to need to replace eventually. Another big one is healthcare. No, I don't want to get too deeply in healthcare, but it is definitely a need. Maybe you have coverage to your employer, maybe not, but you will face significant financial difficulties if you are insured. If you have insurance, if you want the hospital, the average stay is going to cost you maybe $1,000 or more, and your plan might cover everything. Another thing to consider is that if you're incapacitated in the hospital, you'll lose money just by not having to work. Didn't know your options, you may be eligible for reduced cost coverage to healthcare.gov. I don't know if you noticed, but children, they generally cost money. The average child assuming a middle-class lifestyle will cost nearly $250,000 to keep happy and healthy up until they're 18. This then covers things like college, though considering the annual costs of education and that many people kind of go to college anymore, a lot of these alternatives are looking better every day. Now we get to the fun section where covering wants. There are things you need, you just want them. I think this is an important part of including the budget. Again, we're trying to budget for life what we want to live. Part of a good budget is that it gives you permission to budget for fun. Eating out, going out with friends, vacation. Now, this model assumes 30%. Not everyone can do that. Maybe like closer to maybe 20, 15. But I encourage you to save at least like 10 or 5%. Because otherwise you're gonna be miserable. Again, we don't want you, but again, You don't want to feel guilty as well. If there's like you're right tight, you should leave yourself room to do something you enjoy. Try to include the minimum of whatever makes you happy, because it, just because it makes you happy, and it relieves stress, and it can also make you more productive. Live the life you want. Sorry. Live the life you want to the best you're able to afford. Now, just because you have room in the budget for something doesn't mean you just buy it. For instance, large purchases like nice clothing, a phone, computer, or TV, if you just want to make them, I generally recommend you wait a week. This gives you time to research your options and find the best deal, and just not purchase whatever looks pretty at the time. Again, this is the best general purchase you could afford to wait. If you smash your phone or your car and your word smash with the car, you might have to replace that much sooner. But if you have time, try to wait at least a week. This is a general point I like to include, maybe when closer to the beginning of the presentation about tips, but I always like to include a buffer allowance. Again, your budget will not be perfect, and there will always be unexpected life expenses. Include a buffer amount to account for these expenses, possibly like 3 or 5% of your monthly income. Again, this will account for months where you may end up spending more. Now, not all of your paycheck can go to needs and wants, because you will need and want things in the future, like emergency money to save if you lose your job, or you can scrimp until you find a new one. Maybe you're dealing with debt you have to pay, or maybe you want to start investing or put something away for retirement. Mostly things we can expect, so expect expected and plan for them. Again, depending on your goals, maybe you can't do 20, or maybe you want to do more, maybe 30, or maybe 30, especially if you have significant debt. Now, the start of any discussion on savings should be on how to build an emergency fund. You can do all the planning in the world, but accidents happen, and there are a lot of things outside of your control. That's just part of life. These things happen, so we plan for them. Now, the majority of disasters include, but are not limited to, job loss, car repairs, major appliance breaks, like say your furnace or water heater, medical emergencies, or just simply any drastic life change that targets your bank account. Now, a good number to shoot for is 3 months of projected monthly costs. Now, that includes everything you budget for, and possibly 6 months if you can swing it. Now, even if you're living paycheck to paycheck, do everything in your power to have something there, even if it's just like $1,000. That's going to prevent you from using credit cards. Oh, someone raise their hand. Did someone have a question? Oh, okay. Again, if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand or ask it. I can get to it. Again, at least $1,000, because the big thing happens that if you have nothing, that maybe you might turn to high interest loans or credit cards, which is going to ruin your finances in the long run. Again, once the crisis is over, pay back into this fund as soon as possible. Now, no one likes debt, and debt is a hindrance, but if used correctly, it can improve your life in some cases. For many people, this is going to be things like their car, or home, or higher education. But whenever you plan to take on new debt, always ask yourself if it's going to be worth it. Will this lead to me making more income in the future or improve my life? If you have existing debt and you're struggling and need help with relief or consolidation, I recommend you see the National Foundation for Credit Counseling or the Financial Counsel Association of America. Now, if you are planning to get new debt, keep this as guideline when trying to make it manageable. Working on your gross, you should have no more than 28% of gross income on your housing-related expenses. Some of this may be debt-related, like a home loan, and no more than 36 on total debt. Let's say again, 36,000 a year is our gross, and that breaks down to 1,400 a month towards everything dealing with housing, which includes utilities. The remaining 400 could go to other forms of debt. Now, this may not work for everyone, especially students. If you have room, or maybe if you room with people or live at home, you may pay no to low rent or housing costs in general. You could probably get by with a higher limit for a time. Again, that's not possible for everyone all the time. And here's just two general guidelines if you have debt and you pay off. One is the snowball method, pay off all the small debts first, or the avalanche. Generally, is take the smarter one, take out the highest interest debt first. Again, you can also, make a list, sort amount, the highest interest rate, budget beyond the minimum to not just be paying the minimum, and after paying off one debt, move into the next one. Now, once we have emergency fund in place, all of your needs are met, and you can fill some of your wants. Your debt is manageable. The question is what to do with the rest of your money. Now, some of you may leer at investing, but you think it's too complicated or scary. You may make a few bad decisions and ruin your finances. But it's not that big of a risk as you might think. In fact, smart investing is one of the best ways to protect and grow your money. Due to yearly inflation in various areas, definitely this year, your money loses buying power bit by bit. If you just keep it in a savings account, it will barely make anything just by being there. But if you check a conservative number like 6 or 50%, you can easily see comfortable returns in the long run. I'm not going to tell you what to invest into, because all investments carry risk. But I will say it never hurts to have multiple diverse ways to invest. If one source doesn't do well, more sources means a more stable average growth. To help find a level that works for you, we actually do have some great resources here at the library. For books and databases, two I like to recommend are Morningstar and Value Line. They have a bunch of great information on stocks, bonds, ETFs, and all of their investment opportunities. They also both provide comprehensive education resources on investing. Again, those are free with your library card. You can access them anywhere through our e-resources section. Here's a simple example of how far your money can go with a bit of playing and time. Say we have $5,000. We don't need it right now and feel comfortable putting it aside to grow somewhere. If your goal is to have, say, $10,000 in 5 years, and we have an investment options, again, it's 5%, and if we pay just say like about $55 a month towards the initial pot and let it compound, we will have $10,000 in 5 years. Now, this only holds true if we are investing in whatever being invested in holds at 5%. If we threw it all in one particular stock and the company falls through, then of course we'd lose it. But if we have a plan that's safe and diverse, it's an easily attainable goal. Now here we're at the end of the presentation, and also at the end of the financial road, retirement. There are some separate options available to you. I can't tell you which one's going to work for you. Again, we all like to have a 401k with our employer and matched by our employer. That's always possible. Maybe you're looking at an IRA. If you want more in-depth recommendations, I've included a few books at the end presentation that might give you some tips. Now for general budgeting tools. Here's a list of mostly free budgeting tools at your disposal. There's actually a lot of budgeting spreadsheets through Excel. That's the one I use a lot. That's what you can see on the screen. But there's a bunch available through Google Sheets, which is free as well. For apps, if you want to make sure your bills and expenses line up with your budget, there's one called Mint that lets you sync your banking information and categorizes all your transactions based on some general categories. And they recently added the ability to add your own. Now, if you want to include multiple people in the budget, Good Budget includes the option to include multiple bank accounts and for multiple people as well. Another good one is you need a budget. It does have a yearly cost. I think last I checked was like $85 a month, but there's a lot of people who swear by it. Now, from the library, we have an excellent selection of databases, services, and books to help you keep informed in the financial matters. I've included 3 Linda courses, which again, these are free courses with your library card. That gives you much more information, a lot more information on budgeting as well. I especially like just the general one called Manage Your Personal Finances. If you want to know the best deals from any consumer goods, you also have a subscription to Consumer Reports, which we have it just as magazine form in the building. You can come read it, or you can view their services online as well. Again, we also have access to Morningstar and Dialine for general investment information. For books, I always like to recommend the 101 series, again, Personal Finance 101, Budgeting, Debt, and Home Buying. Those are all really good introductory books with a lot of nice looking infographics. I highly recommend those. And now for other resources. Besides what we offer here at the library, I included a short list of resources that may be of use to you. I'm not going to go over them that much, and again, I'll add more in the future. One I will recommend is the Will County Center for Community Concerns. They have a lot of good local programs if, say, if you need financial assistance with housing or utilities or other kinds of assistance. They have a ton of resources at your disposal. And that covers it. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.